How do you do? This is Trixie, the Golden Witch, the ranting, raving Ota Queen and mother of AniTube, and this is ASE Presents Yig Studios Vlogust, the month in which I do a video every single day to celebrate my 31st birthday. I am one of the first products of what I will call the franchise era, and many of us have only lived in the franchise era. It's hard to have perspective on what things were like before. I wasn't around. I've only seen shows and movies and glimpses and, read history, that type of stuff of media. But under my observation, I really do think that the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s began the modern media era that is driven by the franchise. And in a weird way, I guess it's reflective of business in the sense that that franchises are almost like people, or even like groups of people that you have some kind of friendship with. Like a franchise is like a friend for the modern individual, and it's because you have familiarity with them. As I've grown older, as I've done more research into why things become popular, the biggest reason is familiarity. People just like things more when they're familiar with it. It's very hard to become familiar with a new thing. As a child, you're constantly put in positions to develop new familiarities because you can't really control what you're doing or your situation. The reason that most people sort of get stuck in their ways as they get older is that they have the power to control what they are going to encounter. And so they are not actively familiarizing themselves with new things unless they want to personally, not because the world is just thrusting them in front of new things by the course of, living. And so, people who are always in the same environment, who never really travel or get out there or like meet lots of different types of people, by the time they're older, will not be used to any of that stuff and will be even less likely to engage with anything new, to develop new familiarities. So there are, of course, people out there like myself who make a point to find new things, who are like out there trying to develop new familiarities. And I think that's not only rare, but the main reason it would happen is that you don't have a innate comfort or like enough familiarity with any one thing. Like for me, I moved constantly throughout my life. If you missed the earlier videos from this month, or the Where Am I Right Now video where I talked about how many times I've moved, I never developed a familiarity with a community or with a place because I just was never in one place for long enough to get that deeply familiar. And I had to develop familiarities with all these different places and all these different people that I ended up at to have something to do, someone to talk to, something to think about. So, I've had to explore and find new things and find niches that I can fit into. But even still, when I do find myself in a comfortable place or with people I want to be around, then I'm not as likely to be spending a lot of time seeking out new stuff. It's like I get into a comfortable position and it's like, okay, I can sit here for a while, until this isn't possible anymore. And a lot of people really are just dedicated to making what they're familiar with continue to be possible for themselves. Like their whole life is just maintaining this stable familiarity that's unchallenging, so that you don't have to think about anything else or experiment or put yourself in the way of being uncomfortable. So I really do think that most people are seeking that comfort. Most people are hoping that they will find a place that they can settle down and just be comfortable. It's rare that someone, feels enough comfort just within their own existence that they are willing to put themselves through discomfort deliberately, or are just so uncomfortable already that they know there's nothing that can make them comfortable enough to not be worth the risk of always gambling on being uncomfortable in service of trying to get to a comfortable place. And you might be thinking, what does all this have to do with franchises? Well, a lot, because when it comes to media, people literally will get attached to franchises and then consume nothing else. It's very easy to become totally wrapped up in the comfortable familiarity of things you already understand, and just adding little pieces onto that as you go with new products that are relevant to it. But even still, I think a lot of people get into a franchise when they're young, get to an age where the part of the franchise that got them into it is no longer really relevant to them, but they still love it because they're endeared to it conceptually. And so as they grow older and new stuff gets made that's in that same franchise, even if you don't like it, you end up going to see it and comparing it like unfavorably to the thing from your childhood, even if the thing from your childhood isn't something you'd ever really come back to and watch again, because it's just the associated memory of like having felt happy about it before, it having done something for you before, that makes you continue coming to the franchise hoping to get some of that again. Even if it's just a chance to like relive the memories of when it made you happy the first time. So I grew up with Power Rangers and Beast Wars and Pokemon and Godzilla as like the major parts of my childhood. And some of those are older franchises. Godzilla is a franchise that has been going since 1958. Power Rangers, likewise, the original Super Sentai is a franchise that's been going since the 70s. So I guess you could say that in Japan, they figured out this franchise thing a lot earlier. Whereas a company like Disney, for instance, that now is just known for franchises, wasn't. There was no Disney franchise. There was the existence of like Disney as a brand, as an identity, as like a style. But they were just making movies every few years. And some of those movies would be really popular and stay in theaters, and other people would make their own adaptations of those same stories or things that are similar. But there was never like an Alice in Wonderland franchise. There was marketing, there was toys. A lot of that really exploded in the late 80s, early 90s when consumer culture really, really, really took off. But like, there just wasn't like a store. Well, there wasn't a Disney store, up until a certain point. Like, there just wasn't places that are entirely dedicated to maintaining franchise existence and your ability to care about it. But then you get into, again, that late 80s, early 90s period. We have the Disney Renaissance, where every time they have a successful movie, they make a sequel or two on home video and like keep doing it until people stop caring. Even smaller franchise films like the Land Before Time series that was coming out around the late 80s, early 90s, I was a big fan of. It was just like anything that was successful on home video, they would try to make a sequel because there was more of a chance that, like, if it could be made cheaply but still appealed to and like gotten into video stores, even if it couldn't make it to theaters and there wasn't like a huge advertising push, the fact that so many people are in video stores at all means that just having a video there is branding and marketing in and of itself. And that made things easier, I think, for a lot of these franchise films to start coming out a lot more. Now that we're in the streaming era, the access is so instantaneous to pretty much everyone, anyone who owns a phone, that like it's very easy to justify continuing a franchise because, like, as long as the person still has a Netflix subscription, they're gonna find out that Stranger Things season 4 came out. Like it's just so much easier to put content in front of people. And what people are always going to seek out is the familiar. They're always going to click on something they already understand and know that they think they're going to like. That is the first thing they're going to gravitate towards. If someone gets all the way into the weeds of watching stuff they barely care about, that just means they exhausted everything they like, or it's very hard for them to find things that they like. And I used to fall into that category. I used to be somebody who was desperately seeking out media that would reach me on a really deep level. And I finally did get enough of that it was satisfying. And now I'm more able to go outside of things that are obviously interesting to me and, and watch stuff that maybe I wouldn't have assumed I was going to enjoy, but I'm trying to find something to enjoy about it. And even then, the proximity goes like right now I'm big into MCU films, which are just anime. It's not a big leap to go from large budget superhero cartoons from low budget Japanese cartoons, but just the MCU happens to have some faces attached to the cartoons. For me, my interest in the MCU is actually specifically in that it became enough of a franchise to be interesting. I as a child was always interested in things for the meta-textual element of it more so than the actual product. I was watching Beast Wars as a kid, but my obsession with Beast Wars was because I could buy the toys, I could go online and Google pictures of it and print them out and stuff like that in tiny little thumbnail form. When I got into Pokemon, like the whole point of it was that it was this big meta franchise with all these different component parts, and that made it so exciting to me. And for people like me who got into that, like, it's almost the expectation that everything will be that way. Like, I'm not surprised at all when a show becomes a card game and a cereal box and a bunch of other stuff. So I indulge it. I enjoy it. I like seeing things I'm familiar with. I like being reminded of the good times. And I understand the cynicism a lot of people feel when they don't like the new stuff as much as the old stuff. But I really do think a lot of that comes down to like confirmation bias and not really revisiting the stuff from your past, or being overly precious about it, or not even really understanding what you are getting out of it and why why you're getting something different out of the new stuff versus the old stuff. I guess I just think that franchises are such an emotional thing for people. It really is like a person. It's like someone you care about. In a way that like an individual show rarely is, unless it goes on forever, like The Office or fucking Supernatural or something. Like, that can be a part of your life that you care about. And those are also things that have been expanded to kind of franchise level. There's Supernatural prequel, The Office has had spin-off shows, so like there is an element of using that familiarity to branch out. But I really do think that we're reaching a point now where it's almost impossible to not make a franchise, because there are so many of them that you can really pick and choose between dedicating your entire life to one or two IPs to the absence of everything else. And I don't even think that's unhealthy. I think it's unfortunate for smaller creators who are like never gonna get their unique ideas out there. But I also think that we shouldn't expect anyone to care about something for no reason. Like, people just should like what they like for the reason. Like, art is utility. You're supposed to be using it to help you live. If franchises help you live because it's a warm, comforting, familiar sensation to come back to, then that's great. That's what the point of it is. And I understand why people might think, you should be challenging yourself and finding new ideas. And yeah, that would probably make the world a better place, but it might not make you better. You might not be capable of it. You just might not be able to understand or interpret or really get much out of trying to expand your horizons, and the horizons go forever. So, there's a stop. Everybody has to stop somewhere, even if it's just when they die. But like, no one's ever going to learn everything. No one's ever going to consume every piece of art. No one's ever going to see every unique perspective. So instead of holding yourself to task over all that, enjoy what you like. If seeing Transformers makes you comforted, like I grew up with Beast Wars. None of the other Transformers franchises have ever really grabbed me in a real way. But when I go to the store now and Takara Tomy is doing like the Legends series of Transformers, where they've got like Beast Wars and guys from every series and new guys, and I go to the toy aisle and I sit there and I'm like, kinda want them, kinda want the Transformers. I don't buy them because I'm not mature enough for toys yet. That's my problem. I have to come back around full circle on that one. I treat all my stuff like shit, so my toys just end up broken. Anyways, I'm enjoying life in the franchise era. I'm trying to franchise myself as much as possible, be a recognizable, comforting presence that you always want to return to because it reminds you of something good. And hopefully it's still good for you. If not, whatever. At least it's better than whatever else you were going to do. Anyways, thanks again for watching Vlogust. Stick around for more videos coming for the rest of the month. Check out all the videos that have already come out this month. At this point, there's a whole bunch of them. There's links to everything I do down in the description. Patreon.com/GoldenWitchFire. Rants for $5 or more. DM me your rant request. GoldenWitch.substack.com. For written articles, ASE Presents is the YouTube channel where all the podcasts and music that I release are on. The Whatcha Reviewin' channel is where I review music, albums, singles, and even do lyrical analysis. So check all of that out. Thanks again for watching, and never forget, anime forever!